Okay, so the last step in this is refining and adjusting. And this stage can go on and on until you start to add details. But for us, since we're working on starting and building the foundation, we're just gonna make sure we have all our values in the correct place and the big shadow shapes and highlights and the midtones all put into place. I'm also gonna show you a palette technique where you mix your values and in the future, maybe your colors out on the palette. So we started off with just kind of going for it and mixing with the brush. And if that's the way you like to do things, that's awesome. If you want to try a different way, I just like to show all the different ways to do things. So some artists will spend a lot of time mixing their paint on their palette. Now with acrylics, they do tend to dry, so you want to just mix enough for your painting that you're working on, which obviously isn't the easiest thing to do because you don't know exactly how much you're going to use, but you can kind of make an educated guess. Okay, I'm going to use a palette knife for this, and I'm going to come out with start with a big glob of white here, and I'm basically going to make the value scale on my palette. And so I'm holding it like this because this is my pure white, and then I'm going to have, you know, the lightest gray, a little darker, 1, 2, 3, 4, probably will need some more white in here. Okay, I'm going to leave some of the black, pure black too. So I'm going to take just a little bit of this black and mix it in here with my palette knife. And you can see I'm using mostly just the tip of the knife and really mixing it, and you can pick it up. And so that's one. And then I'm going to take a little more black from here, mix it in with this guy, get it darker. And I'm going to cover up the value scale on my painting, so it's sometimes nice to have it on your palette too. So it's good to watch the videos all the way through first, just to get, you could have started this way too. Sometimes I like to just jump right in when I'm painting. Sometimes I like to take time to mix paint. You should try all the different techniques and figure out what works for you. You know, my preferences have changed over time. It depends on what kind of painting I'm doing. Depends on my mood. It depends on a lot of things, you know? Okay, so, and you can take time to really mix these to get them right. Let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Yes, that's what I wanted, 6 colors. Okay. So I'm just gonna wipe this off. I like to keep that clean. And what I have here, if you're noticing it, is just the other side of this Tupperware container. And I have an old t-shirt that I've ripped up. And I use this just as a way to like wipe off my brushes after I put them in water. So I have a clean cup of water here. Move some of this stuff out of the way. Clean cup of water, and then I have my little like wiping area. I'm gonna use my sort of medium brush to get started, and we're gonna work on refining and adjusting. So we're adjusting the values, making sure we have the right values in the right place, and then we're refining the edges to get the shapes of our objects more in place. So this is pretty much dry, only was like a half hour or something, or maybe even less. That's what's nice about acrylics, is that they dry. Okay, there's all kinds of things you're gonna hear out there about painting from light to dark, or dark to light, or starting with the midtones. You know, everybody has an opinion. There's no right way to do this. It's painting, it's art, it's about your expression. So I like to show you lots of different ways and let you figure out what works for you. And again, like same with this palette technique, you know, try it. Maybe you'll use it in this class. Maybe you'll never use it again. Maybe you'll come back to it in 10 years and be like, oh, I want to paint like that now. Whatever you want is totally fine. Okay, so light to dark or dark to light doesn't really matter. I think like I like to usually start somewhere with my midtones and get them in depending on the color of the canvas. And then I usually always go back in the end and add the darkest darks and the lightest lights. So I'm gonna start with this like darker tone to just refine some of the edges here and get my core shadow. So I'm gonna come in with my black and really figure out where that is. There's this core shadow here, and you want to practice just brushing. You know, I'm using my paintbrush in sort of the way like the shape is of the surface of this pot. And then there is this that I ignored earlier, but there's this line that I'm going to add. Probably need a smaller brush for that, but I'll just put that in. And then we have this shape going kind of like that. So I'm getting these darks in. I also need this to be more at an angle, but I can't just make one line here for the background because the background has a lot of different colors. So I'm gonna think about what this color is, this value, sorry. And I'm gonna come in this next darker color on my palette. And I'm really gonna refine this edge. And it's going at an angle. And then I'm gonna use that and come in. There's something in between this darkest dark and this next value that, see how we can blend that in by using the value in between. So I'm doing like a gradation, and this comes out a little more. And then we have some more here, and this edge comes out. So I'm just adjusting. And then I'm going to go see what else is in this dark gray. So it's kind of this right here. So I'm looking at my still life and I'm looking over here. I think some of this on the wall before it gets really dark is that tone. And the top of this book, it's interesting because it's a dark color, a dark value, but it's in a highlight. So I'm gonna darken it a little bit from what I have it. And then this in between here also, darken that a little bit. And I think this might come out more. The book is looking way too small to me. So I'm gonna grab some more paint and I'm gonna, this shape is bigger, you know, so you're always refining. And since I haven't added too much detail, it's not bothering me to make this surface larger. Because I'm seeing the edge of the pot here. And I think this needs to come up, right? This book is bigger on here. And then I can come in here and refine the edge of the pot a little more. So the pot has that angle in. So I'm gonna adjust this top of the book, and I also think it comes out a little more in the back. It's kind of a funny angle, but let's get this right. And then we would have the center of the other book come all the way out here. So you can always keep adjusting. Don't be afraid to keep adjusting. And then the bottom would actually be down a little more. So I just made the top surface of the book, and I think if I come in with a lighter tone for the pages, you'll see more of what I did. So I'm just rinsing my brush in the water, and then I'm tapping it into this kind of t-shirt thing so it's not so wet. So I'm going to take this tone for the pages of the book, and I'm going to come in and go like that. So that's what I was doing here, just making that part bigger. I think this goes out a little more. So don't be afraid. The point of what I'm doing right now, what I'm showing you right now, is to not be afraid of making big changes. This stage, this foundation building stage, is all about adjusting and not being afraid of changing your composition to make it look right. You know, don't be afraid to make big changes. Now, if I had started doing detail here, like if I had a title on the book, if I had all this detail, I'd be less inclined to make these changes, right? Because it would be too hard. But since I'm using this blocking in technique, making changes is easy. Okay, this is not going to be perfect because perfection doesn't exist. We could spend all the time doing this. What's important is that you're learning in this blocking in technique. Okay. So we have these colors, these values, apologies that I keep saying colors instead of values, and I'm gonna come back into my dark tone without cleaning my brush and add the shadow on the bottom and the side of the book just to get that back. And again, you know, using a big brush, even though it might seem counterintuitive, is good here because you're really forcing yourself to not get too detailed. So use as big of a brush as you can stand and just get all of these in place. Okay. Now I want to work on this edge a little bit, where we have the highlight and the shadow. And I'm gonna work from dark to light here since I have a lot of dark on my brush. So I'm gonna come in about where the darkest dark is here. I think that needs to get even a little darker, so I'm gonna add more black. You can get really dark here. Kind of see it's almost like, I don't know how to describe the shape, but this is where it's making the darkest shadow, almost like an oval type. And then it's curving down a little bit. So painting is really about seeing these subtleties. And we're doing what we call direct painting, which is getting the colors that we want directly onto the canvas. There's other methods of painting known as indirect painting, where you build up layers of glazes and you see you know, they show through, so you're painting not exactly the color you want to see. Anyway, that's a more advanced painting technique and usually done with oil paint. But this direct painting is very enjoyable and you can get stuff down quickly. All right, so I'm getting my darks here, and we have the abrupt edge of the book, and we have this dark here, and then we have this area where I'm gonna take my next step on my value scale and mix it a little in, kind of in between those two. And I'm going to add some more detail to this shadow. So now see, because I'm in between the two, it's blending it. So I see this shape happening here, a little more subtlety than I had at first. So like I said, this stage of the refining can just go on forever. You know, you can keep adding more and more detail as you go. And I'm someone who jumps around a little bit in my painting because I like to think of it all working together. But you can focus on one area at a time. I'm gonna come in and obliterate my value scale because it's bothering me right now. So I'm just taking this mid-tone, getting rid of that. Well, this is what's so nice about acrylics, is you can just go right over. And this is gonna help me I'm focusing on this edge right here. So you're adjusting your values, you're refining your edges. Now this feels way too sharp to me. So I'm gonna come in with this darker value, but not the darkest, and do a little adjusting here. And this got too dark, so I'm gonna come in with that. So we wanna see the lip of the pot, and you can see how things start to come together, and then I'm gonna get lighter. So this is how we get lighter and lighter, and starting to blend things into each other with the paint itself. And then if there's something in between, you can always mix these two on your palette to get the value in between. And then I think I need to come in, I have all this a little bit lighter on my brush, but I'm gonna come into my darker values here and start mixing. This edge got too sharp. The edges are a little softer here. And you know, this pot has a lot of texture on it, so it's not perfect. You know, it's not perfectly smooth. So you can use your paintbrush to show, your paintbrush strokes to show the texture of an object. Okay, so this step could go on and on forever. I am gonna come in, I'm gonna put this in my water. I am gonna come in with my smaller brush and add some highlights. So you can be done. You know, you don't have to get detailed. This is not about detail. I'm gonna add a little water to this just so I can smooth in these highlights. And so at the end, it really helps if you get your lightest lights and darkest darks in here. And you can keep refining these edges. I see there's a highlight in here, and this needs to be a little wider. And you can wipe your brush off and get more paint on it. I could just keep going forever, but I don't want the video to be too long, and I don't want you to feel like you have to make anything perfect, because there is no perfection here. But I do see some highlight here, so I'm coming in and putting some highlights where my lightest lights are. And with this side of the book, I'm kind of using the dry brush to give me a little texture here and the feel of the canvas, just to like make that look how I want it to look. I'm coming in with my lighter value and blending this in. This got a little too not blendy, so let's get some midtones in here to get this looking the way And it's great to see these brush strokes. I love seeing the brush strokes. You know, we're not taking a photograph, we're painting a painting, so it's great to see all the brush strokes. I'm gonna wipe some of this excess paint off because it got really light, and I'm gonna come into this value here to start to blend in my mid-tone shape. So I'm just always looking and comparing, getting everything where I want it to be. And I worked from dark to light, and then I came back in with the lights, and now I'm working back from light to dark. So you can kind of go both ways, back and forth as you work through your painting. Get all the shadow shapes and highlight shapes blocked in. Now, I know this has a lot more refinement to go, but this is all I'm expecting from your painting. I don't want you to go too far into the detail because that's getting too much in the weeds, right? We're thinking about starting a painting, getting the foundation. I need just a little bit of water on here. I'm gonna clean off my brush, wipe it off, and I'm gonna bring back some darks here to get somewhere in between where I just was. I think I had too much, like sometimes you can have too much light or too much dark on your brush, and you just have to kind of rinse it to get back. Here we go. So just getting these in, getting these tones in. I'm gonna come in, since I have this smaller brush, and get the lip of the pot in. Okay, I don't want this video to take forever. It's hard for me to stop painting once I get going, but I think you all get the idea. You know, we're blending by creating different values. I wanna see, you know, choppy values. I wanna see your lights and your darks. I want to see you thinking about shadow shapes. I want you to experiment and have fun, try different size brushes, you know, challenge yourself. This is all about starting and getting the foundation, looking at your composition, seeing where is the darkest darks and the lightest lights. And I'm gonna end this video, say I'm ending this video here, but I'm gonna keep going kind of quietly so you could see how I would not exactly finish this, but maybe take some more time to refine it in my own way. And I'll just talk a little bit, but this is plenty for the assignment, and I'm just gonna keep going for my own self. I'm gonna add some of the glazing liquid here. Sometimes I do a thing where I add it like that on the bottom so I can mix it in. And so my next steps would be to keep refining the edges. I'm not so happy with this here. This is bothering me. I need to get it the right values. So I'm gonna get lighter to go behind. I'm gonna get this shape that's like that and blend it out here. And then this is dark. There we go. So I'm just kind of mixing those. It's gonna be my, this is the reflected light. And there's more reflected light here. This needs to come out further. So with this glazing liquid in, I can blend a little more. So now I'm coming in with more of this mid-tone to blend into the shadow shape here. So it's really just a bright highlight right here, and to get more white in there. Like the light's coming through from behind the pot. And since I have white on here, I'm also gonna catch this highlight up here and blend that in, because there's a pretty bright highlight and it's curving upwards here. And then I'm gonna just, sometimes while I have like something, a tone on my paintbrush, I'll kind of fill stuff in with that, refine this edge a little more. And if sometimes I roll my brush like that in the paint to get a little bit of a point. Let me get this edge the way I want it. And there's a little bit of reflected light here that we don't want to forget. And then I'm going to take some more of the acrylic medium and get this really light value, like the lightest after the white. Get it mixed up here and come in and smooth some of this out. And there's like some texture on this pot that I kind of like, so I'm gonna use my brush strokes to kind of emulate that. And then it got a little too dark, so then I come back in with the white, get the colors where I want them to be. And I'm using my strokes to kind of emulate what's ever happening on the pot. Maybe I'll actually do that with a little bit of black, because that, I like the way that pot looks. I think it's terracotta, however they made it. It's so pretty. And you know, there can be a temptation to overblend, but I think at this stage, it's really good to focus on getting the colors you want. Oh my gosh, I keep saying colors. Getting the values that you want, where you want them to be. Practice your brush strokes, practice getting things where you want them. Okay, so that got pretty light. So I'm gonna come in, take some of my medium and get into this darker stuff. And we have the core shadow here. So I'm actually gonna use my bigger brush, my medium brush, and get into the black with some medium. And focus on getting that shadow in the right place. It's not like a perfect cylinder because it's, you know, made of natural materials, so it's not just like a straight line the way it might be if you had like a metal cylinder or something. Now this line is too abrupt, so I'm gonna find the value that's kind of in between that and soften up that edge. I also want to soften here. Having a little glare, that can become a problem depending on your lighting. So I tend to like move my painting around to help with the glare. Okay, I'm gonna dip a little bit into the black, take some acrylic medium, and bring back this dark line. My hand is always very shaky, but that gives it character. And I'm gonna come back in with get my darks in here. Need to wipe my brush because it got a little too light. All right, I'm gonna pick up this dark again that has a little bit of the glazing liquid in it. And I'm gonna come. So if you lose, like sometimes the darks and the lights get lost, and that's okay. That's what this refine and adjust phase is about. And that's why it can kind of go on forever, because you can keep just painting layers and layers until you get it looking the way you want. So I'm leaving these very choppy so that you can see the brush strokes, which I actually kind of like. You know, there's all different kinds of styles that look, you know, maybe some people might think this looks messy, but I like it. And it's also a good way to learn because you're really practicing putting different values down where they belong. Okay, this background is needing some work. So I have very dark on my brush, so I'm gonna come in and bring back some of this shadow that we see here. And I'm just doing like almost like cross shapes to get some of this tone down. Need some more of this mid-tone here, like a dark, maybe almost right in the middle. There we go, to blend that. And then it's kind of feathering out, so also want to get this edge is not looking great to me, so I'm kind of refining this edge still. Okay, so you can keep going. You could have been done a long time ago. If you're still watching, amazing. I don't want to get into much more detail than this because this is how we start, and the starting of the painting is so important, just getting the foundations of the lights and darks. And you know, I can see here, sometimes I also just like painting until all the paint on my palette is done because I know I'm not going to use it, and it'll just get thrown in the trash. So sometimes I even start another just like fun painting on a piece of paper or something. This stuff is actually a lot more lighter down here, so I could come in and start to refine that a little bit. And this one goes out further and this one stops here. So I could really get these books looking more like they do with the tone that they have, with the value that they have. Get some more white in here. And it's also just kind of fun to put a lot of paint down on. And I hope you can see how this stage of refining and adjusting can kind of go on and on until you get more and more detail. Like here, there's a little more shadow to show how the book turns, and then I could come in and grab this side is lighter because it's facing the light. And get some more white in here. I think we know this is the highlight side because it's facing the light, and then as it turns, it gets more in shadow. Same with down here, the second book. And then we can come back into this more shadowed mid-tone shape. You could even start to make like a suggestion of the pages of the book. And I have like kind of a dry brush right now, and this like dusty old book, kind of just like dry brush the top of it, where I'm barely touching, you know, and give let the texture of the canvas kind of show through with that. That's a good thing if you're using up some paint like I like to do. Okay, I'm not gonna do too much more. I know I keep saying that, but I want to just clean up these edges a little bit. I'm just dipping into my black paint. And I think you can see, I hope you can see with painting, like it's never like, you're never like stuck, you never really make a mistake. You can just keep painting over and over it. You can start over and make a new painting. You know, there's really no like mistakes to be made. There's no right and wrong. Like this kind of loose painting style, I think is really enjoyable for everyone, like advanced painters and beginning painters, to just kind of think about the shapes that you're creating. Really look at the objects you're focusing on. So at the end, I come in and look at, you know, really start to punch up my darks and lights and really get the darkest darks in place and the lightest lights in place. And that like contrast between the dark and light values is what creates like interest and drama in a painting. I just get a lot of paint on here, but I'm like kind of twisting it because I want. Another way to get a point or an edge is making it like flat. So I'm kind of going on either side of the brush and flattening it, and then you can kind of pick up, dab it into the paint and pick up paint. Let's see how that works. This edge needs some refining. That's not the right tone there, so I'll go back and fix it. So I'm constantly dabbing into this dark paint because it's getting a little swallowed up. This is darker up here than I have it, so there's some really dark, it gets really dark right here, so you can get that super contrast in. It's really dark right here too. You know, the more you look at it, the more is going to pop out to you. All right, I think I need a little bit of a lighter tone here. Still pretty dark, to just keep refining that. I'm getting, this wasn't the right value here. It's more like that. here, this isn't that heavy of a line. It's lighter. So see, I can just paint right over it. I mean, how awesome is that? Okay, I am gonna stop. I am actually going to stop right now. You should also stop because I know you have other things in your life to do. This is way beyond the time you need to spend on this. It's just a study, it's just an exercise, but also have fun with it. If you want to keep going, if it's relaxing, go right ahead and keep painting. Nothing wrong with keep painting. But if you have other work to do for other classes, or if you have to go to work at your job, I don't want this to take forever. Okay, have fun. I can't wait to see your paintings.